uniformed personnel, present arms. Order, arms.
Thank you for the honor guard for that. Thank you all for coming this morning. So, ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, fellow community members. Before I begin, I'd like to request that we observe a moment of silence for all those who perished on 9/11. Thank you. We, first responders, community leaders, residents, come together today to remember those who lost and gave all on 9/11. On that day, our nation experienced a terrible loss, a terrible tragedy that shook us to our core. Attacks on the World Trade Center, Pentagon, Flight 93 not only took the lives of thousands, but left a profound mark on the collective soul of our nation. We remember, I remember clearly, being glued to the television that day as all of our lives were changed. We remember the shock as the plane slammed into the towers, first one and then another. And then, amazingly for me, watching the towers fall. As we gather here today, we cannot forget the brave firefighters, paramedics, police officers, and many others who rushed toward the danger that day, selflessly putting themselves on the line, trying to save others. Many paid the ultimate price. Countless others still, to this day, bear the physical and emotional scars of that day. Remember the loss, the pain, the spirit that emerged from that day. 9/11 affected all of us, all Americans, in some way or another. It united us in grief. It also united us in determination. It reminded us of the importance of unity. Today we gather not only to remember, but also reaffirm that commitment. There are some parallels. Here in this community, we have seen the power of coming together. For example, the resilience and the extensive recovery, and then the rebuilding after the Marshall Fire, which we seem to be reminded of every day from the construction noise. But in those first few days, we saw the coming together of the community. We saw grassroots organizations sprout up from nothing. These grassroots organizations came together with community leaders, came together with state, national officials to work to bring the community together and bring the assistance that was so sorely needed after that tragedy, in direct parallels to what we saw on 9/11. We've demonstrated we are a community that supports one another, and the memory of 9/11 inspires us to keep those efforts going. We must do more than just remember. We must be motivated by the example set by those heroes on that day, both on the tragic day and on the days that followed. The first responders picking through the rubble, the communities trying to heal and move forward. Everybody came together. It was one of the few times in my life that I remember this country being so united in a purpose. And today we will honor that bravely in selfishness. I challenge each one of us as individuals and as a community to find ways to give back, to remember the spirit, remember what went on in 9/11, and it was duplicated and magnified in this community after the Marshall Fire. It doesn't have to be grand gestures. Small acts of kindness and service can make a profound difference. By working together, we can build a stronger, more resilient community, just as our nation did after 9/11. Took out the phone number in my head. In closing, let us remember not just the tragedy, But more importantly, let us remember the strength, the unity, and the togetherness that came from that tragedy. Let us be inspired to make a positive impact on our community and the lives of those around us. Together, we can overcome any challenge, and together we can build a brighter future. A future where the memory of 9/11 serves as a reminder to our capacity and our compassion and our unwavering support to one another. On behalf of Mountain View Fire Rescue, thank you. May we never forget the fallen of 9/11, and may we continue to work on building on their legacy. Thank you all.
Thank you.
The fire service is known for its traditions, from the showing of uniformed personnel to the pipes and drums and the apparatus. But there is no greater tradition than the fire department bell. The bell dates back to the beginning of the fire service, over 200 years ago, in the era of Ben Franklin. It was used as a signal to call, as well as a warning, letting people know that there was an apparatus coming through. When the call finished, the bell was rang as a signal to the firefighters to clean up their equipment and return home. Since then, it has been used to signal the end of watch for a fallen firefighter. You will now hear 3 rings 3 times as we remember 9/11. The last thing that we have for the ceremony is from our membership. I reached out to them and asked them what 9/11 means to them individually, and they quite a number of them got back to me, and I'd just like to read some of that to you all. 9/11 exemplifies resilience in the face of great tragedy. It proves that if we band together, we can achieve monumental tasks. It's a moment in history that should never be forgotten, and the sacrifices that were made should always be honored. For me, 9/11 is less about the horrendous attacks on our nation and our people, but rather about the heroic acts performed by so many people that day. Whether they were firefighters heading up the stairwells of the World Trade Center or normal civilians that prevented another attack by fighting back on Flight 93. It showed the levels to which people help in times of crisis. Ordinary people did extraordinary things that day, knowing they would likely not survive. This is heroism in its purest form. I started volunteering with my fire department about 4 months prior to 9/11. At that time, I had no awareness about anything outside of my department and the people I worked with. I remember watching the towers collapse as I sat in disbelief, shock, and anger as I watched people choose between burning alive or jumping from the high stories above out a window. I couldn't believe the amount of people that perished that day. And then came the realization that all of those cops and firefighters sacrificed their lives without hesitation. When I couldn't begin to fathom making the choice to sacrifice my life to leave my family behind. I was so green and new to my own service, it was a shock and humbling realization to learn what it meant to be part of this amazing brotherhood and sisterhood of first responders. As time went on, I felt more responsible to my country, to the citizens of the district, and to my fellow firefighters. The stories that came out of NY were filled with bravery and painted with an amazing picture of brotherhood that I didn't yet understand. People everywhere started thanking me for being a firefighter, and I remember feeling guilty for those kinds of gestures and praise because I was only a volunteer. It's been 20 years since 9/11, and since then I've lost some friends in the fire service, and I have come to understand the brotherhood, family, and camaraderie that comes along with the department. I've come to understand the frailty of life through my own service in the community. The time we share with our brothers and sisters is only for a season, and I try my best not to take the time for granted, knowing how limited our time together might be. Thinking about 9/11 makes me realize how quickly everything can change and how fleeting time can be. I know 9/11 was devastating and that it had an immense impact on every person that witnessed those events. However, I can't help but reflect that even after such devastation, we managed to find unity and hope. 9/11 gave me an unfortunate yet vivid example of what sacrifice and true brotherhood meant and will continue to mean to me and to my continued service. September 11th is the day my view of the world changed and realized that we as Americans had become targets for everyone's ills. Right or wrong, that both innocent and brave individuals died that day. It makes me sad to this very day. I remember watching it on TV. I was just a kid at the time, and I remember my mom crying. I didn't understand what was happening. As I grew up in the aftermath, I cannot doubt that it's made an impact on me, enough to perhaps push me towards the fire service even more. Once I was in the fire service, it has become more impactful every year. What those brave firefighters did on 9/11 was the truest definition of honoring the oath. Many lived that day because of that. It's almost impossible to fathom if any of those firefighters knew how that day would transpire, even more so if they had cared what would have happened to themselves. It's hard to believe that children who were born post 9/11 are adults now, and that it is something they will learn in their history books that will become our norm. We owe it to all who perished to remember them, remember their sacrifice, and live in the freedom that they gave to us.